Today on the TMZ Podcast.
Welcome to the TMZ Podcast. Harvey Levin here.
Charlie Neff here.
Courtney here.
And Fabian here.
We are going to talk about something remarkable that happened over the weekend with Kim Kardashian. But first, you should know that you can follow the TMZ Podcast on Apple, Spotify, Google, anywhere else you get your podcasts. So we're going to start with Kim. I have to tell you, everybody...
Wait, hold on. Let me guess. You loved it, and you were super impressed.
I'm going to explain.
Okay.
Oh, Fabian.
No surprise
already
there.
so negative.
I'm not being negative. Anyway, go on, please.
I thought she would do okay. My thing was, they are the most carefully managed family
for sure.
that we cover. And they hate negative...
Very contrived.
They hate negative publicity.
I know.
They don't really engage in much self-deprecating humor.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's some of it, but generally not toward other people in the family.
Right.
She went for it.
Listen, I'm an influencer, so I understand that the things that I say carry weight. But, I would never tell anyone what they can or can't do. Remember, I'm a Kim, not a Karen. And honestly, with all of the K names, it's really impressive that my mom didn't pick Karen. I mean, somehow she just knew. I don't know how she saw that one coming and not Caitlyn.
I mean, it's true, the writers did it, but they allowed it.
Yeah.
And it was surprising, hilarious.
Right.
And I thought she did a great job.
Because if you're going to do it, Saturday Night Live is a stage to do it on. So,
Definitely.
of
But
course she's going to do it there.
I mean, to say the Karen joke that I'm so
That
glad.
was awesome.
I'm so glad my mom didn't name me Karen. She must have known that was coming.
So we should kind of set this up that Kim K hosted SNL. A lot of people weren't sure if she was going to do great or not.
Right.
Deborah Messing came out, said I don't
She's
understand. What am I
talentless.
But
missing
she was
here?
just bitter because she was the only person from Will and Grace that didn't get asked to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
boy.
it could be that. But so it aired, and she had a great monologue, opening monologue.
Here's what I'll say. The monologue was good. The skits, it was okay. So
Excuse me.
overall,
The People's Court skit. I
was
like.
hysterical.
I know you have a personal affinity to that, obviously. That skit was actually kind of boring to me, frankly, out of all the ones that she did.
Thanks,
Her
baby.
monologue was great. She didn't do terrible. I think people think that just because it wasn't a train wreck doesn't necessarily mean it was fantastic. It was somewhere in the middle. It was okay. She held her own just fine.
You want to hate it.
I don't want to hate it.
You
really do.
You really do.
don't
You
want to hate
actually
it.
do want to hate it.
I just want to say that her monologue was good. Her acting chops still need work. She was reading cue cards off. Like you could see she was just pure reading cue cards. She didn't know her lines. She's not a natural performer. With that said, it was aight. It was just aight.
I just still, I mean, look, Saturday Night Live lives and dies by the writers.
It does.
And they brought it for this.
For the monologue, 100%.
And look, I mean, they just don't. To say, how could my mom not know about Caitlyn
Right.
if she knew that not to name me Karen? That's unbelievable.
Well, the shot that
and
she
the
took
gold
at
digger,
Kanye.
no, but
no,
the
the
gold
Kanye
digger shot
personality
with
Yeah,
was my
she took
favorite.
shots at Corey Gamble. She took shots
OJ.
at OJ, Kanye West. Who, by the way, I know it was interesting. Speaking of Kanye, she said the reason I quote divorced him made it seem like it was already a done deal. Which is interesting because the two of them have been out and about all over, whether it's the West Coast. He was also there in New York. They went to NBC Studios together. So what's the deal? Are they together or are they not?
They're together.
This ambiguity is
Definitely.
driving me crazy.
No, it's not ambiguous. You're missing it. You're missing it.
What?
Lay it on me.
It was
Okay.
part of the show.
They're not getting divorced, I don't
No.
think. That when she said that.
All this drama for nothing.
She
Well-
came out and introduced herself as Kim Kardashian.
I
Well,
know,
no.
that's-
But she was going to do that anyway because of the kid's name. But look, Kanye was in New York. He wasn't on the show, but he was in New York.
Might have been in the building probably. Or
He
backstage.
was watching the monologue and then he went backstage.
And so they are trying to make this relationship work. If she didn't, if this wasn't moving in the right direction, she never would have said that.
Right.
I think this was a joke they were both in on because they're probably
he
gonna.
definitely approved it.
Yeah, and they're probably
for
gonna.
sure.
I just
He
don't
loved
see
it.
this divorce going
I
through.
wish they would just get divorced so she could be single and we could just speculate who she's going to get with next.
Oh,
but
God.
anyway.
By the way-
Oh, the Bachelor skit, she had plenty
Yeah.
of guys to do with.
They-
I
that
was
was
friends
funny.
with that.
They
was
did
so
that
That was
funny.
funny.
it was one of the better skits, but they did the heavy lifting for her. She was literally just there saying, She was reading off a cue card. You could
But
see
that's
she was
how
like,
The Bachelor is. And also, there was a huge celebrity come through. Terrence Howard was there. Of course, Kris Jenner, her mom,
Amy
did a couple
Schumer.
skits.
Everybody
Amy
rolled
Schumer,
through.
Tyler Cameron, Chris Rock.
Blake Griffin, who used to date Kendall.
Yeah,
I was like,
that was
oh.
The
interesting.
Rock.
By the way, why?
The Rock.
Why was
The Rock.
Why was Courtney
Chris
and
Rock, you
Kendall?
mean.
I understand.
No, I thought The Rock.
John Cena was there.
John Cena was
Cena.
there, not The Rock.
Getting
He
your
wasn't there.
WWE people mixed up.
God, I
Yeah.
hope I didn't screw up the website.
I get
Oh, no.
Kylie not being there, but why was Kendall and Courtney not there? That
So
was weird. That
Courtney-
only what's her face? Chris and then
Chloe.
Chloe.
were in attendance, but not the rest
Well,
of them. It's
Courtney
just
had
weird.
Travis's son's birthday party.
Oh, okay, that's obnoxious.
Anyway, look, I mean, she did a. Did you see my parting shot on the website?
What?
Remind me, what was
That
it?
she got high marks from everybody.
Yeah.
Too bad that didn't happen with a baby bar.
Yeah.
Oh,
She still
my
didn't
God.
pass
You
that.
just
She
had
still
to.
needs to pass that. By
Well,
the way.
if she was making the jokes, okay.
Yeah, then you
Okay,
can.
we're gonna move on. I don't understand the psychology of writing books in the middle of things like Britney Spears. Jamie Lynn Spears is writing a book now.
Yep.
And it is not coincidental. This is coming as the conservatorship unravels.
It's not coincidental at all because her book is all about her own mental health struggles. And she has this long caption on Instagram plugging the book, which I think is called Things I Should Have Said. That's interesting considering Britney Spears recently trashed her, subliminally, but like she trashed her sister. But Jamie Lynn Spears says that this book is all about her own personal struggles, her own story, and she says stuff that I was taught to gloss over growing up. So it's also a shot at her parents and her family. So and look, I mean, you can
You don't
say
think Britney's going to come up in this book?
she is going to be.
Of course
She is going to
it
come up
is.
in this book, but it just seems
A lot.
Is it opportunistic? Am I the only one that sees this as
Absolutely.
exploitative? Like
Everybody thinks
she's
that.
milking the conservatorship case. The book's coming out at the same time. It's just it seems icky to me. I don't know. Like I don't like it.
Because
I
It is icky.
agree.
Right?
I mean, I wish somebody would disagree here, but I agree with you. I think it's Britney has said that her family wasn't there for her.
Right.
And
Or Jamie Lynn wasn't there for her either.
and that includes Jamie Lynn.
It does.
So to piggyback on what Britney is going through right now and writing a book, because Jamie Lynn can say whatever she wants, that she's writing this book about her and her struggles and everything else. Timing is everything.
Yeah.
And this just doesn't look good.
Okay, well, here, I'm a younger sister. I can kind of debate this for her. She's always been in Britney's shadow. Why can't she have her voice? Like, this is the time to write it. This
She
is what
can have her
people
voice,
cares
but just
about,
not
so
right
why
now.
wouldn't she
Do it next year. Do
But
it next
also,
March.
Why
What
do
if-
it next year?
what
She's
if
going
she-
through it now. What if it is helping
She's
her
not-
mentally
Oh,
now?
She's been
Or
go-
what if she reveals some big bombshells in this, where she takes Britney's side, reveals something about her parents that people don't know? Like maybe she can bring things to
She's
the light that will
this is
change
Dan-
things.
this
She's
is-
jumping on a train at the
This
last
is literally
minute.
damage control because if you remember in the last few months, Britney has taken some shots at Jamie Lynn, and Jamie Lynn has looked terrible. So this is damage control, and the way she's sort of masking it as being okay is mental health. Because if anyone who claims mental health these days, you can't touch them, you can't criticize them, and I think Jamie Lynn is
But maybe
using
Jamie
the
Lynn
cloak
wasn't
of
allowed
mental
to
health.
speak about
So
it.
okay, so
through-
hold on. So here's what's going to happen. She's going to write the book quickly, I bet, and it's going to come out, and there's going to be a passage about Britney that nobody knows about.
Sure.
They're going to use that to sell books, to put her on talk shows,
course.
to talk about Britney. Does that feel like it's exploitive to
Yes,
Yes,
1000%.
very
you? I
much
mean,
so.
how is that not exploitive?
It
It is
does, but
exploitive.
people use opportunities.
No,
all
I
the
understand. I
time.
understand that, but this is Britney's thing right now, not Jamie Lynn's.
But it's also Jamie Lynn's. It's her family. It's her life too.
She is piggybacking on
But
Britney's.
But you don't know if she was there for her sister. Maybe her sister did come after her, so she has to defend
Well, right-
herself.
right.
She has a family too
That's
that
true.
she has to
She
defend.
does have a right to defend herself.
Of course
but
she does.
With a book though, like
And
that's,
she's not saying
It's the only way maybe she can get out her voice.
She did an Instagram video, and everyone just laughed at her. It didn't help her at
Yeah.
all.
All right.
Okay.
Also,
enough.
Okay.
So, to me, the big thing over the weekend is Bill Maher.
Right,
Oh.
talking about
But
the
also-
slow
You
moving.
love Bill Maher.
Well, this is real. This is real. And whether you like Donald Trump or hate Donald Trump, I don't think you can argue what Bill Maher said. We are in the middle of what he calls a slow-moving coup.
Here's the easiest 3 predictions in the world. Trump will run in 2024. He will get the Republican nomination. And whatever happens on election night, the next day he will announce that he won. I've been saying ever since he lost, he's like a shark that's not gone, just gone out to sea. But actually, he's been quietly eating people this whole time. And by eating people, I mean he's been methodically purging the Republican Party of anyone who voted for his impeachment or doesn't agree that he's the rightful leader of the Seven Kingdoms.
The way Bill Maher put it was January 6th and the 2020 election was the equivalent of the first World Trade Center bombing, where there's no way the towers would come down where a truck goes into the building,
right?
He said. And then what they did is they figured out we'll take airplanes up and hit the buildings.
Yeah.
That, he says, is what's going to happen in 2024. Because what Donald Trump is doing, and it's really amazing because Donald Trump is not a strategic guy. He doesn't plan, he just talks.
He just goes for it, yeah.
But he's got people behind him on this because they are now, I mean, it is a methodical plan to get all the new Secretary of States in who will be on his side, counting, basically regulating the election.
Right.
They've got voter suppression laws. They're gonna win the House in 2022.
Yeah.
Which means that when the House certifies, it's going to be a heavily Republican House, and on and on and on. And so what Bill Maher said was, it doesn't matter who wins the election, really.
He'll say he won.
He'll say he won the next day, and he can make that happen. And you could end up with two people going to the Capitol to get sworn in on January 20th, 2025. Right. And that is the setup for a civil war.
So speaking of civil war, the timing of this was so interesting. I don't know if Bill Maher is a fortune teller or what, but basically Trump had a rally this weekend. We didn't cover it because it wasn't really worth covering. It was more of the same. However, there was a woman at one of these rallies. It was in Des Moines, Iowa or something like that, I think. And this woman was interviewed by people on the ground, and she spoke of civil war. She says, I see a civil war coming.
I saw her.
Did you see that?
Yeah.
She says, I see a civil war coming. It's coming.
But
that speaks directly to what Bill Maher is saying, that this is festering.
What would be the point
ongoing
of the Civil War, though? Just Republicans versus Democrats? Everyone's fighting for what?
I don't know.
Fighting for control.
These people that support Donald Trump really think that they even think some Republicans are part of the establishment, whatever the hell that means.
Let me tell you something. I now believe there is a really good chance that Donald Trump would lose the election in 2024 and will become the next president.
Which is a scary prospect.
It is
break that down.
If he legitimately
Because
loses,
you think because he will have enough people in the House
he's going to have the mechanisms in place to make it happen.
He is working now to get Republicans, his people in state legislatures.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So when they start picking electors, they're going to say in state legislatures, screw the vote. We'll just put in our people.
That's what he was trying to do in 2020. He didn't get away with it.
He didn't get away with it, but now he's figured out how to fix it.
Yeah.
And fix it, I mean fix in a bad way.
Right.
So George Clooney had something.
Yes, that's a good transition. Anyway, George Clooney. So George Clooney, speaking of Trump, he talked about Trump this weekend in politics and Joe Biden. One, he says he's not running for office, which is such a relief to hear because I hate the idea that people want celebrities in office for some reason. I don't like encouraging that.
Arnold
Matthew
Schwarzenegger.
Don't even get me started with Matthew McConaughey. He's an idiot and he drives me crazy. But like,
oh my goodness,
regardless of whatever celebrity it may be, it could be the most whatever. George Clooney says no. I don't want to be a politician. I want peace in my life. He says he's an older guy. He wants to enjoy his years with his wife and his kids. So good for George Clooney. I appreciate that. On Trump, he says Trump was just a knucklehead chasing girls back in the day.
It's so funny because, he was just this knucklehead. I knew him before he was, a president. He was just a guy who was chasing girls. Every time you went out, he'd come over and be like, what's the name of that girl? That's all he was. And the idea that there's this whole group of people that, that they think he's the champion of, which he certainly can't stand in real life. But he's gonna play this out for a while, and we'll see where we go with it as a country.
That was to me the headline, that he was just like sitting back saying, "I've known this guy forever."
He was just like some little sleaze bag, like, "Hey, who's that chick over there?" And that's all Trump ever was just a cartoon character, who everyone thought was harmless. And look at him now. And then on Joe Biden, I don't know if I necessarily agree with this, but he says Joe Biden deserves a ton of slack and a ton of a longer leash, essentially, on criticism because, there's a lot of things that Trump left behind that Joe Biden needs to fix. I think Joe Biden is fair game in my opinion.
Well, not just that. Not just that.
The
Yeah.
Afghanistan thing was
Afghanistan was a nightmare,
horrendous.
for sure.
And not just that, but I mean, there are all sorts of issues with the border, with immigration,
for
all sorts of
sure.
things, and COVID. But
And he seems to kind of just sort of disappear into the background.
I love George Clooney, but I just feel like he was on such a roll and he screwed it up by saying,
What part?
give Biden a break, give Biden a break.
Yeah,
It's like we should be looking at Biden fairly.
Well, because he
Right.
would have never said give Trump a break. He would have never said that.
Right, and
But
Trump
no,
doesn't
but
deserve a
Trump-
break
but
either. Trump
Trump-
doesn't deserve any breaks.
Well, I know he doesn't.
No,
but I'm
but,
saying he would have
Trump's
never
record,
even.
Trump's record is there. And it's fair game to criticize.
Sure.
Biden is in the middle of it.
Yeah.
But to say don't criticize him yet because he deserves some slack just feels like he's a partisan hack.
Yeah, it did come off as partisan for sure.
Yeah.
But, he's a hardcore
Okay,
Democrat. So.
I want to talk about this because I was talking to somebody over the weekend and I didn't know anything about this. And I am fascinated by it. And I think this could be a huge, huge benefit for this, to curb the opioid. I don't want to call it a problem or an epidemic. It's a crisis.
Sure.
And, you and I were talking, Fabian, about Kate Quigley this morning.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I was thinking about these fentanyl strips with Kate Quigley. Think about who would be alive in her circle.
So Kate Quigley, if you'll recall, is the one comedian out of the 4 who overdosed about a month ago here in Venice, and she survived while 3 of her friends died. She was the lone
And
survivor.
it was cocaine laced
It was
with fentanyl.
cocaine laced with fentanyl,
Which they didn't
she's
know
trying
that
to get on with her
component
life
was
and
in
get
it.
back to normal. I think she's in some kind of rehab or something like that based on her social media. But she's slowly trying to get back to normal. And this thing, even Michael K. Williams died of a suspected overdose. Fentanyl might have been at play there too.
Well, fentanyls would play with a lot.
It is.
So,
Right.
It's not
so
even
there
celebrities,
is
so many
something
students.
there is something that's been out actually for a couple of years.
Yes, fentanyl
Most
strips.
people don't know about it.
They
and
don't.
And it creates a really interesting issue for everybody to deal with because there are these strips that can detect fentanyl in drugs.
And they're probably not 100% foolproof, but they help. I'm sure they help in some
They're
way.
very effective.
For sure.
They're very effective. And what you could do is, like, if somebody gets cocaine, heroin, any drug,
Meth,
you can test it. Now, the issue, number one, is doctors aren't talking about it. The media is not talking about it enough. And
users are not aware of it.
And by the way, it's illegal in some states because it's considered drug paraphernalia.
So, and
Interesting.
Look, I talked about this about a month ago, and I got a lot of backlash. Basically, where I said, don't do drugs. How about just not doing drugs and getting involved in the
Right.
first place? In this,
Courtney.
It's not like realistic, so it's just
I know,
like
but,
some.
like,
It's like saying
What does that-
don't
what does that
have
mean? It's not
sex.
realistic. It's not
Yeah.
realistic to ask somebody not to partake in something that can kill you.
But
you know what I mean?
For
Like,
every
and it's
single
kinda
person,
why are
it's
we?
not realistic.
it's not.
For
It's
the
not.
human
it's not-
population,
it's not
no,
realistic.
Fabian.
I
It's
get
not
where
a
you're
way to,
coming
like,
from.
approach it.
Yeah, no, but it's not realistic. I mean, it's what Nancy Reagan did. It doesn't work. But the fact is, people
So
are.
we're encouraging people. It's
No,
just- it
well,
seems
see,
like
no,
we're
no,
that
but-
person
but
to
that's-
but you're
encourage-
encouraging people to like do it safe. And Fabian, you're gonna save lives. So many students die from overdosing, and for this, like you like really.
I read
I mean,
an
look,
article
do you-
too.
do you-
that
do you-
said-
do you- do you-
Honestly, I can
Fabian.
support it if it saves.
Hold
lives,
on.
which
Do you know what
does.
this is like? You know what this is like? This is like talking to teenage girls and boys about using
Sex.
condom,
Safe
birth
sex.
control,
Right.
because
you're going to do it anyway.
You're gonna do it anyway.
But drugs are
So
different because some people have the good conscience and the fortitude to be like, you know what? Actually, why are we not all drug users?
No, no,
because
no.
we know it
You're
can
not-
kill us and is bad for
No,
us,
no, no.
right? Like
Right.
it's just obvious.
Hey, it's one thing to say, we're encouraging you to use cocaine and get a fentanyl strip. You're not going to say that. You're not going to say, go do drugs, kids. What you are going to say is, you shouldn't do it. But if you do it, there are these strips available
Sure.
that can save your life.
Right.
What's wrong with that?
Nothing. And not only
What's
does it save
wrong
your
with
life,
that?
fentanyl's
when you
so
put it that way, I
addictive.
guess there's nothing.
Nothing's wrong with that.
Sure.
And
Also,
we should
USC was handing these out to students
USC
to
is
try
on
to
this
help all
just
the
recently.
naive drug users.
And
Nine
I was
students on
reading.
campus.
I was reading
9
that
to
article.
11 a year.
I read this article. I don't know if this applies to all fentanyl strips on the market, but it was dirt cheap. It was like a penny a strip. I
Totally.
read that in the article, which is crazy. If it's a penny a strip, then it should be widely
Well, and
available.
it's nice because the USC has an app, so you don't have to like go to like the doctor's office and get it. They can like come directly to
Right,
you.
it's
So it's
discreet,
even safer.
for
yeah.
sure, for sure.
And you know what's happening? I know this sounds weird, but there are people who go to Mexico and they can't take the drugs they want on the plane, so they get them there, and fentanyl is an issue
It's
there. And
it's
so
everywhere.
instead of trying that, they could bring strips. And again, I'm not encouraging people to go down to Mexico and use drugs, but if they're gonna do it, if they're on vacation and they're partying and doing whatever, take the strips down. And yet nobody's talking about it because, like, a lot of people feel the way you did at the beginning of this, which is, oh, we're going to be encouraging drug use. Bull. They should be actively talking about this.
Yeah, and here's what I'll say. Like, I have mixed feelings about it. Obviously, the strips are good because they do save lives. However, I will say that if you dabble in drugs, you reap what you sow. So be careful. You know what I mean? That's all. Can we just say that?
Fabian and I are part of the DARE generation. So
I'm definitely not part of the DARE. DARE was way before me, but I inherited DARE in my spirit.
But you do almost wish there was like
parents.
a tip line so they could call like the authorities, so they could like say where they got the batch of it, because you do want to figure out where the fentanyl is coming from and put a stop to it.
Right.
Yeah.
That's like the major case. So.
And by the way, that's a benefit of the strips.
Yeah.
That you can immediately find out if they're fentanyl laced. And you know what? You should call the authorities, even if you're doing it. Make an anonymous phone call saying so-and-so selling fentanyl.
I should also
laced
note
drugs.
that you can overdose on drugs that are not laced with fentanyl. You can also die from. So just keep that in mind, kids.
Okay,
Anyway.
so
Kids. It's adults, Fabian. They're not even like kids.
Doing it.
Final thing. I'm really interested in what Morgan Freeman was talking about.
Okay, so this is interesting. So Morgan Freeman, and this piggybacks off of another sort of, I guess what you can call a controversial statement he made maybe a year or two ago, when somebody asked him, how do we quell racism? How do we get rid of racism? And he said, very simply, stop talking about it. So Morgan Freeman did this interview with Black Enterprise's Selena Hill. Morgan Freeman said, I do not support defunding the police.
I'm not in the least bit for defunding the police. Police work is, aside from all the negativity around it, it is very necessary for us to have them. And most of them are guys that are doing their job. They're going about their day-to-day jobs. There was some policemen who would never even pull their guns, except on the range. So that sort of thing.
I think this is all about terminology and semantics, because the girl who was conducting this interview in her Instagram post, she was mad at Morgan Freeman because she says this speaks to this fracture in the Black community, I think, because a lot of people in the Black community support BLM. By extension, they support abolishing or defunding the police.
I don't think that's true.
She's like, this is, I think it's the phrasing we're using that people are getting like triggered by it. People see the word defunding or abolish the police and they don't understand what it means. Basically what it means is just sort of taking away some resources, taking away some money and putting it elsewhere, like in mental health clinicians,
right,
or
like
whatever.
having like a peace officer.
See,
so,
yes.
for example, if you have an issue with a homeless
Right,
person
instead of funding
mentally...
a ton of our, military weapons for the police, where they have an artillery full of just these like machine guns and whatever tanks, use some of that money, put it in different places. That's kind of what defunding the police means.
This was one of the dumbest catchphrases that I can think of in my memory.
Defunding the police?
Yeah,
Yes.
they want their neighborhoods safe
For sure.
And-
they just don't
and-
want to be treated like shit.
and they
Or killed when someone's
killed.
and
Right,
they
exactly.
are. So, but the sentiment is that it shouldn't always be confrontational, and it's not so much defunding them. What it's
Right.
about
or
is
abolishing them.
it's
Right.
redistributing.
It's-
It's redistributing
That's
resources.
the key word.
Right.
Whoever came up with that catchphrase,
It's crazy.
screwed up. They should have said redistribute the police.
Well, because it already
rethink
puts
the
so
police.
many
There we go.
people
That's
off.
Yeah,
that's-
but-
Reimagine the police.
Reimagine, rethink the police. That's the catchphrase they wanted, but they
But-
fucked up and went with abolish, and now people are all now there's this whole like
Well, now it's
confusion.
playing,
Well, people
and now
don't
it's
even wanna
it's
hear it.
completely playing
Yes.
into
the right.
Absolutely.
Yes, it is.
Right.
And it's like I remember when Richard Nixon was running, America, love it or leave it.
Yeah.
And the whole idea was it's anti-American. You're going to have chaos
Right.
and everything else.
He framed it in
They're
that way.
playing into that.
Yeah.
And it's just nuts.
But the
This-
thing is like, let's say you have a stalker coming to your house and showing up and is like mentally unstable. And instead of calling the police, you have a peace officer now, which is essentially what they would do
Right.
for defending
Or a
the police.
social worker or whoever.
Who would
whoever-
come
whoever
and
can show-
try to talk to this person
Yes.
in a way that's maybe
Well,
a little bit
and,
more
you know,
easier
and-
for them to understand.
And Killer Mike this weekend had a really interesting take on this. That he was, and I was thinking about it when he said it. When you become a policeman, you're in the academy for 8 months. He said this should be like, at the very least, junior college, where it's 2 years, and they rush people through the academy.
They do.
And there are things that that these police officers, these rookies, could learn if it was a longer training that would allow all of this to happen. That it might not even be redistributing all the resources; it's training them better.
Right. It's a full picture. There's a lot of things that need to be done. And I think Morgan Freeman might feel differently if you asked him about it in a different way and you said, hey, how would you feel about reallocating?
Of course he would.
Yeah, he would have a different take. But when you frame it, hey, how about defunding the police or abolishing the police? He's like, no, screw that.
I get it.
Yeah.
Okay. Again, TMZ Podcast. You can find it on Apple, Spotify, Google, anywhere else you get your podcast. We will be here Wednesday. Have a good one, everybody.
All right.